Kamala Harris accused of lying about Florida's new Black history curriculum. The vice president traveling to Jacksonville and blasting the state's new Board of Education standards on teaching slavery.
They want to replace history with lies. Middle school students in Florida to be told that enslaved people benefited from slavery. They insult us in an attempt to gaslight us, and we will not have it. Instead, they dare to push propaganda to our children. This is the United States of America. We're not supposed to do that.
The media piling on over the vice president's concerns.
Free housing, permanent employment, and all-you-can-eat cornbread. Board of Education in Florida wants you to see that job description and think, you know, maybe slavery wasn't so bad.
But this is the game that they have been playing, trying to both sides, racism and white supremacy.
I have to laugh. It's so disgusting that there were personal benefits of any kind to slaves.
And just because Black people write it don't mean that it doesn't mean it's going to be accurate.
Shame on you people in Florida. How dare you try to whitewash slavery?
He felt, and a lot of people around this country are starting to feel, that we can't teach the correct history of this country because it makes white kids uncomfortable.
So you get the idea. But National Review says Kamala Harris is brazenly lying about the curriculum. Harris is singling out only one bullet in the program that says this: slaves developed skills which, in some instances, could be applied for their personal benefit. National Review points out that there are 190 other passages Harris is not mentioning that teach about the evils and horrors of slavery. And two African-American scholars who actually created the new curriculum, they are defending it, claiming it's being taken out of context, with one calling Kamala Harris's claims, quote, categorically false. He says the vice president is misinterpreting what the controversial passage means.
It is the case that Africans proved resourceful, resilient, and adaptive, and were able to develop skills and aptitudes which served to their benefit, both while enslaved and after enslavement.
This is hot on the campaign trail. Ron DeSantis was asked about this in Utah. Here's what he said.
Absolutely ridiculous. It's totally outrageous. You guys can look on the website of the Florida Department of Education. You know, they got a lot of scholars together to do a lot of standards and a lot of different things, but these are the most robust standards in African-American history, probably anywhere in the country. She's going to come down to the state of Florida and try to chirp and try to demagogue.
It got political real fast over the weekend, Greg. Charles Cook's piece in National Review runs several pages because he lists all 190 of the other passages that Kamala Harris didn't mention.
It's weird. It's like the media wants you to believe the Osmond brothers came up with a curriculum, that it was all evil white people. It's actually, that's why they keep saying Floridians, because then you don't know what race it was. Again, though, I sound like a broken record. This is not a real story at all. This was completely made up. It was snippet journalism. Once again, she took one piece out of a huge thing and turned it into some kind of screed against racism and all this other stuff. It's not real. She sounded drunk, but I often sound drunk at times. You know what I hate most about this? That we all have to do the work that Kamala was supposed to do. So she comes out there, she lies, she did no preparation. What happens? Every fool like me this weekend has to read the curriculum. I'm exhausted. I wanted to play. I wanted to hang out with my dog. But it does gross you out. I think I get grossed out when I see this because I imagine how much a better country we'd be if people didn't go on this crazy fake we're a divided country BS. I think we need a colorblind summer. You know, how much better everyone would feel if blacks didn't feel oppressed because the media told them to, and that their coworkers and their classmates weren't seen as oppressors because they happened to be white. That would be really nice. This was not the administration we were promised, right? We were supposed to have, by old Joe, everybody was supposed to get along. Now all it is stuff like this to create division, right? We now have to feel guilty at all times about who our ancestors were. And we're always going to be the target, and that's apparently keeps them out of trouble. I don't know.
There was also this idea that Kamala Harris, one of the first things that she did was figure out a way to, okay, this is something that I can do where I can get the Democrats perhaps interested in her. Her numbers with them are even very low. Jim Messina is a former Obama guy. He's a campaign guy, knows politics very well. This is the Democrat point of view on the politics.
Sometimes the best gifts in politics are ones that the other side gives you. I love how quickly she decided to go down there the next day. Her remarks, she was not scripted. She looked at the cameras and just said what was in her heart. It reminds you why she first came to prominence.
So it's not about the substance, but about the politics, and maybe she does get a score on that one. Jesse?
I don't think she's going to get a score at all, because everybody knows she's lying. And I just have to ask the African Americans watching right now, what's it like to be lied to by Kamala Harris? What's it like to be lied to by these buffoons on MSNBC who didn't read the curriculum or The View, have no idea what the story is, have no idea what's going on down in Florida, and they act upset. They act enraged on your behalf based on a lie. I have the African American PhD we just heard from, Dr. Allen, who's going to be on the show tonight. I mean, he says this right here. This is well documented among historians. This is historical fact that slaves did develop skills while they were enslaved and then used those skills as blacksmiths, as in agriculture, tailoring, in the shipping business, to then use to benefit themselves and their families once they were freed. That's not controversial. And it actually speaks to the resilience and the aptitude of the enslaved African Americans who were at the time able to better themselves and able to improve their situation, despite brutal conditions, horrific and abhorrent conditions. The guy says this in the statement after blasting Harris: the attempt to reduce slaves to just victims of oppression fails to recognize their strength, courage, and resiliency during a difficult time in American history. This is probably the most rigorous African-American studies curriculum I have ever seen. I mean, this goes back pre-Atlantic slave trade. This goes to the Quakers, the abolitionists, the cotton gin, post-Reconstruction, all the way up to the present. This should be taught in every single middle school, high school in the United States. This is the best of the best, created by African-American scholars in the state of Florida. And Kamala Harris is either dumb and didn't read anything about it, or she knows the truth and has decided to lie to the American people about it. I think it's disgusting. And why doesn't Kamala Harris want African Americans and white Americans to know that Black Americans did learn skills despite being enslaved? Why doesn't she want them to learn that?
Jessica, do you think that she read the whole thing and just decided to cherry pick something?
I do think that she read the whole thing, and I think that it's an incredibly complex piece. When you look at the 191 passages, you have some good, and frankly, I'm just fundamentally uncomfortable with the sentence that Blacks benefited at all from this. And it made me think, as someone, obviously I'm not Black, but I'm Jewish. Would someone say about the Holocaust, for instance, that there were some benefits for Jews, right? While they were hanging out in concentration camps, you learned a strong work ethic, right? Maybe you learned a new skill.
Did you ever read Man's Search for Meaning? Vic Frankl talks about how you had to survive in a concentration camp by having skills. You had to be useful. Utility kept you alive.
But we're also talking about middle schoolers here. And there's a lot of concern about what age people are prepared to understand complex issues. I'm not sure that 12 is the right age to start hearing things like, and when you were enslaved here in America.
What about gender?
They could learn about gender ideology?
Just let me finish. Ron DeSantis knows that this is bad for him because his first response was, I didn't do it, I'm not involved in it. We do know that it's a response to his 2022 act, the quote, Stop Woke Act. And we also know that the type of people who are in charge of this overhaul, maybe not Dr. Allen, who you're going to have on tonight, or someone like Kim Daniels, who's on tape saying, I thank God for slavery, because without it, I would be in Africa worshiping a tree. She's also an anti-Semite. She threw in that Jews own everything, which is a classic trope. But the Florida Department of Education released a statement in response to Kamala Harris's speech saying, she's got it totally off base. It includes, I think, 16 examples of these slaves that learned their skills while they were doing this. And Joshua Stein from Georgetown pointed out that it's riddled with inaccuracies. So first of all, they say James Forten as an example. He wasn't a slave. He was a sailor in the Revolution. Then we've got a couple of your blacksmiths, by the way, who were not blacksmiths at all. Ned Cobb, he was a sharecropper who became the head of the Alabama Federation Sharecropper Union. An amazing example of achievement. Lewis Latimer as well. He was called a blacksmith slave in the Florida Department of Education piece, but he was an inventor who ended up getting 2 patents and was hired by the Edison Company.
Mm-hmm.
It felt to me like
so when I ask him tonight,
ask him, yeah,
exactly
ask him about
that, we'll find
I'll
out
send
exactly
you the article.
what
Yeah,
the truth is.
We will. It just felt that they were trying really hard to de-emphasize that the American experience with slavery was so bad. They talk about how much worse it was in other places. It was really bad here. It's like akin to when people say, oh, like Sally Hemings was Thomas Jefferson's girlfriend.
Okay.
So wait a second.
Do you think it's wrong to bring up that slavery's around now?
You can't talk about the historical record?
Do you think it's bad to bring up the fact that slavery exists right now?
No, I'm not.
Because that would actually make us look good, too. You see my point?
Let me ask Katie, how do you think Ron DeSantis has handled this controversy?
Well, first, I would say that liberals apparently think that teaching critical race theory to kindergartners is fine, but teaching middle school and high schoolers real American history with this very thorough curriculum, they're not mentally or emotionally prepared for it. So I would argue that this is a much better curriculum than CRT. I think that Jim Messina's words about it being from the vice president's heart, and that's what really matters, rather than relying on the truth and what is in the curriculum, is very telling. In terms of how Ron DeSantis has handled this, I think that he's a little bit distracted by his campaign, and he allows and delegates people inside his government and he trusts them to do exactly this, and that's why he hired a descendant of slaves, Dr. William Allen, to write this curriculum, to be involved and to make sure that his voice was heard when it came to what was being taught. He is not offended by the line about skills that were obtained and then used later when slaves were freed, and he's a descendant of slaves. Kamala Harris, the Biden administration has been attacking Ron DeSantis since early 2020 because they've seen him as a threat for 2024. But now Kamala Harris needs something to do, and so she parachutes in to Florida. And I doubt that she read the 216-page curriculum because she doesn't even read the briefs that her staff gives her. But she did use a single sentence about skill development, took it completely out of context, doesn't understand the bigger picture with the curriculum, and then starts pumping racial politics, which then Jim Messina said he was proud of doing that. Mm-hmm. So that's not a unity message. And so, clearly they're going after Florida in their typical fashion, but it's really sad that they're doing it on a very out of context position when they have been saying for years they want African-American history and slavery taught in schools. As Jesse said, this is a comprehensive, very important curriculum, and they're tearing it down because they're using it as a political opportunity against their rivals.
Well, looking forward to Jesse's interview tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.